Hello, I'm Quadra, and this is the Blades of Gixa. Specifically, this is the overworld spread, which will be the subject of this video update number 3. Now, I've explained what this thing is in my 2 previous videos, which you should go watch, but I'll give you a super quick rundown as a refresher. The Blades of Gixa was kickstarted by a lot of amazing people, but you can still pre-order it at paradiso.000/Gixa. So the Blades of Gixa is a megadungeon. It's a setting for people playing tabletop RPGs to explore. Games like Dungeons & Dragons, Shadowdark, Cairn, all that good stuff. Now, I created all this as part of Dungeon 23, which was a challenge to create a megadungeon in a year by drawing 1 room every day, so you'd end up with 365 rooms on December 31st, 2023. And these rooms would be organized into 12 floors, 1 for each month. And as you can see, that's what I did. I was really making it up as I went along, but as I progressed, I started trying to tie everything together. Which led me to create this super dense history spread, which was the subject of the first video in this series. This covers the major events in the history of this world, at least the ones that are relevant to this dungeon. But these 12 floors don't exist in a vacuum. They're underneath the surface. So I also wanted to create a surface spread that would serve as the player's introduction to this world and as a kind of home base, at least for the early part of their campaign. But when I was trying to figure out what information to put on that surface spread, I found there was a bit more background work I needed to do, which led to the creation of this page, which covers the kind of common knowledge of this world. Now, before we can really get into the surface spread, we do need to give it a little bit of context. The deep dive version of this is in the previous video, but I'll do a quick version here. So this huge archipelago, the Caerdalian Isles, comprise the entire world as far as it's known. It's said that this was all once one continent, but the vast ocean known as the Sea of Sorrows has been slowly, inexorably rising as a constant rain falls upon the world. By day, there's a cloud-obscured sun, and by night there are a pair of moons, one yellow, one red, and it's said that a great sky serpent named Jormungandr flies through the sky. The moons are its eyes, and the sun is in its belly. The rain falls and the waters rise because the serpent weeps for all the evils people do in this world. The Church of Jormungandr is the official faith of the Grand Admiralty, which rules the Caerdalian Isles with its huge fleet. The Admiralty is largely run by humans and, to a lesser degree, halflings, but it claims all of the people of the Isles as its subjects. However, the Outer Isles to the east are where its grip is weakest. The islands here have a mixture of loyal governors, breakaway kings, and pirate havens. It's also where the High Fleet sails. The High Fleet is an elvish fleet which has no land. Its people live on their ships. Little else is known about them, save they do not bend the knee to the Admiralty. There are various well-known languages, which don't really matter for us right now, and the most common folk across the Isles are humans, halflings, elves, dwarves, and kobolds. There's a whole calendar, which we don't need to go into here. Jormungandr is not the only god, but it is the primary god of the Admiralty, and while other faiths are to varying degrees tolerated, Jormungandr's primacy must not be challenged. And finally, this is just worth reading. The Isle Montiri is a small outer isle, right here, whose governor, Lady Ilston Bane, remains loyal to the Admiralty. Baintoch, the island's main settlement, is a small but busy town, an important way station and trade port for the Admiralty in contested waters. Unusually for a town of its size, it is host to guild houses for the Noble Seafarers Society, which is a privateers guild, the Mercantilium, the Merchants Guild, and, it's rumored, even the shadowy and feared Admiralty Evidence Bureau, who do the Admiralty's darkest and most secret dirty work. And now, perhaps most surprising of all, the High Fleet has established an embassy in Baintoch, seemingly a sign of some newly forged detente between the naval powers. But why all this presence and activity here all of a sudden? What has gotten the powers so interested in this little island? Could there really be something to the old sailors' tales about Montiri, of secret catacombs hiding the wealth of kings, of secret histories long buried, of artifacts forged by forgotten gods, artifacts of such incredible power they could reshape our doomed world? So these are hopefully some questions the players could be pondering when they arrive on Montiri. Montiri is a small island in the outer Caerdalian Isles. Specifically, that one. So here we have a more detailed view of that island. You can see it's situated in the Sea of Sorrows, with 3 major bays, the Bay of Scales, Quarry Bay, and Harboko Bay, and we have some descriptions up here. The Bay of Scales is very shallow and exposed to the elements, only navigable with small, shallow boats. Quarry Bay is a flooded quarry. There are cut rectangular stones everywhere, and it's quite dangerous. It's favored by smugglers. And finally, Harboko Bay, which is deep, sheltered, has a lighthouse and docks. Nearly all legitimate traffic moves through here. Now at the docks, we have Harboko, which is a port with a harbor master, shipwright, and other amenities. Imports are taxed 10%, luxuries double that. Following the path deeper into the isle, we come upon the old Baintoch ruins. As the world flooded, the city of Baintoch receded to high ground, and this region is now a salt marsh. Past the ruins and the various farms that flank it is the Bainwald, a dense rainforest with hunting and smuggling trails. Deep in the Bainwald is a mill, which also serves as a hunting lodge, and the Char, a burnt black ruin of a tower, sometimes used by smugglers as a hideout. Very few people know it was once Orvis's tower, which he burned upon returning to the surface. And then we have Lake Baina, a freshwater lake that feeds the baths under Baintoch and the rivers, which are here and here. Some additional notes on the side here. Going from Harboko to Baintoch on foot is about 2 hours, it's steep, and there's bad roads. There are no bridges on the island, and it's very easy to get lost in the Bainwald without a guide. Now right in the center of the island is the town of Baintoch, which is the main point of interest on the surface and the subject of the rest of the spread. Now this is obviously very visually dense, and that comes from the approach I was taking when I was drawing the megadungeon floors, where I tried to fit all the stuff that the referee might need to run the floor on a single spread. This is an attempt to reduce the amount of page flipping you need to do while running this dungeon, but it also seemed like an interesting challenge to try and fit all that information onto 2 pages, which necessitated doing some stuff that I've never really seen before, like writing a lot of the keying for the dungeon directly onto the map. So that was the approach that I tried to take when drawing this spread. I wanted to have it so that when your player characters are on the surface, you'll basically just want to be here. And maybe you'll want to do a little flipping back and forth to find factions or tables or whatever, but this spread can kind of act as your home base. So here we have the town of Baintoch. This is the focal point for the surface world, underneath which is the first level of the dungeon, the ancient baths. So you'll notice with the art here that the perspective and scale of all of these things is wildly inconsistent. And actually this is true throughout the entire book. This isn't just because I am a bad artist, it is actually somewhat intentional. The way I think about all these maps that I made, and the surface map in particular, is that they're kind of like tourist maps or theme park maps, in that the precise scale of things doesn't really matter very much. It's more important that the individual points of interest are legible. And like the other maps in the book, a lot of the keying, the text that describes what you're looking at, is integrated into the art. So the description of this fountain is right next to the fountain. The description of this mansion is right next to the mansion, and so on. But there's also some more general information about this whole area, and that's down here. So since it's more general, let's just go through it now. So the town of Baintoch is a small but important entrepot on Montiri, the last civilized outer isle per Admiralty propaganda. The isle is home to about 1,000 surface residents. Half of them are in Baintoch, a quarter are in Harboko, and a quarter are on farms and scattered around the island. About 75% of the population is human, 10% halfling, 10% kobold, 4% elf, and 1% dwarf. So if you had an encounter with someone and you wanted to randomly determine which species they are, you could roll a d100 and use these percentages to figure that out. Most visitors arrive guided by the pilgrim light into Harboko Bay, right here, being released into the seedy village of Harboko. From there, it's a carriage ride or long walk uphill to Baintoch, where they must check any long weapons at the crumbling gate. Beyond lies the bustling town. Orvis, patron saint of Montiri, is said to have cleansed the baths of evil long ago. And here's a reference to the history spread at the back, the Life and Times of Gixa, number 2. Some versions of this tale include the Lost Sisters, 2, sometimes 3, goddesses sent by Yormakunda to assist him in this great task. There's an element of truth to this tale, but if you look up this entry in the history, you'll get a clearer picture. Montiri's hereditary governorship is held by the House of Bain, which is a faction, Governess Lady Ilston Bain presiding. Her ambitions to raise the status and fortunes of her house and isle are well known. Her husband died at sea years ago. She never remarried. Lady Bain encourages the exploration and looting of the underground, which she claims is part of her domain, and levies a 50% tax on recovered loot. She's called for a new Orvis to again cleanse the baths and bring prosperity to Montiri. So yeah, she looks out at the old Baintoch ruins and sees that Baintoch used to be much larger and more prosperous, and a large part of that was hosting pilgrims who came for the healing baths underneath the town. She wants to bring back some of that heyday, which involves clearing out some of the first level. And until that happens, she can make a lot of money enticing adventurers to go down there and do her dirty work for her by taxing everything they bring back up. Okay, back to it. Most do not dare to enter the ancient baths below town, though they were once a major destination for pilgrims seeking release from disease and pain. For generations, they've been occupied by kobolds of the bath, that's another faction, and are known to be dangerous. The Admiralty Evidence Bureau, another faction, their field office is supposedly little more than a post office, but enough stories surround it that its agents are widely feared. Rumors abound. And finally, the High Fleet Diplomatic Mission, another faction, established the embassy only a few months ago. Rumors have swirled around the exotic and reserved High Elf ambassadors ever since. Nothing like some new elves in town to get the rumor mill going. Okay, so related to some of this, and also the guard tower and garrison here, we have this block of text. The Montiri Guard are headquartered in the garrison, where they also keep visitors' long weapons. They may not be carried in town without special permission. They patrol the streets at all hours and will question anyone out too late or otherwise suspicious. They are also stationed in some shops to ensure a 50% duty is levied on any artifacts or coinage recovered from underground, as ordered by the governess. Note that this does not affect XP for gold gain. They also patrol Harboko and, to a lesser extent, the rest of the Isle. Patrols are usually 4 guards and 1 sergeant, and then some simple stats for the guard and sergeant. Okay, so over here we have the town walls. We have a number of buildings, houses. For a lot of these, the ground floor will be a business of some sort, a barber, rope maker, bookseller, you name it, and then those people will live above their business. So this western part of town hosts the House of Rarities, which is a bunch of merchants who specialize in ancient art, relics, and statuary. They're knowledgeable appraisers. The Hall of Coin, which is actually part of the Admiralty government, and the Hall of Justice, which is, where you go if you are too rowdy carousing, or you try to sneak some loot out without paying the tax, or whatever. So over here in the middle of town is this kind of big plaza, and we have in the middle of it the Fountain of St. Orvis, a bald-robed man with a sigil of Orvis, this O with a dot in the middle on his forehead, and water you can see kind of coming out of his sleeves. And as mentioned before, Orvis is the patron saint of this town because he is credited with having cleansed the baths of a curse long ago. And you can go to the history in the back to get more details about what actually happened. Related to that, we have the St. Orvis Inn, which is a respectable and decent place next to the stable and farrier. And we have the Lost Sisters Pub, the sort of most centrally located watering hole, named for the legendary goddesses who helped Orvis cleanse the baths. Next, over here, we have the Temple of Jormungandr, which is this tall tower. It's the tallest building in town. There are some secret stairs under a flagstone in the sacristy inside, which even the clergy doesn't know about. They're very old. And that is actually one of the entrances into the dungeon. And you can see that this has a 7-pointed star, which is a motif that you'll find repeated a lot throughout the dungeon. And also this stone representation of the snake, Jormungandr, wrapped around the tower. And then on top is an observatory, which the clergy use to witness the movements of the sky serpent and track time. So in the temple, astronomy is actually a holy art because they believe that when they're looking upon the moons and the sun and the movement of celestial bodies, they're witnessing their god. So up here we have, a little more description of the temple. It hosts rituals at dawn and dusk. It offers clerical healing and blessings for offerings and donations. And the clergy is actually another faction that is relevant here. So next to the temple, we have the High Fleet Embassy, which is just this little building here. It's small, but it is situated strategically next to the governor's mansion, which is maybe the most important building in town. So the High Fleet Embassy up here, it hosts the ambassadors and staff of the High Fleet Diplomatic Mission, which is a faction. They can relay messages and goods to and from the High Fleet, but mostly host meetings and negotiations with other faction leaders. So there's a lot more to the High Fleet Embassy and the diplomatic mission, but a lot of that more detailed information about them and actually about all the other factions will live on a dedicated factions spread, so you can more easily track what the more secret motivations and interests of the factions are. So here, the governor's mansion is staffed by numerous servants and guards. An appointment and appropriate standing is required for an audience with the governess. Over here is the servants' quarters. So the governor's mansion and the governess are not going to be very accessible to most adventurers starting out. You're going to be a bunch of nobodies and lowlifes and not worth the governess's time. As you make more of a name for yourself, however, maybe you'll get that invitation. So over here we have another tower, the Sage's Tower, a private club and library for the study of the arcane. They're tolerated but suspected of illegal magic use. They're not a major faction, but they could be very useful for magic users in your party and maybe the source of some friction in town. We have various other craftspeople and merchants all around, and then we have the Butchered Ogre Inn, which is cheap, divey, and dangerous, and favored by sailors. And right next door, appropriately, we have the Brotherhood of Noble Seafarers, which is another faction. So down here in the corner, we have a little more information about them. They're a privateers guild. They offer banking, mercenaries for hire, no questions asked shipping, and if you gain trust with them and you grease some palms, they also have some black market services like forgery, burglary, intimidation, and connections to fences for illicit goods. Over here, we have the general store, which carries most common goods, and over here, we have another big building, the Merchants Guild Hall, which is the local headquarters of the powerful Merchants Guild, or Mercantilium, which is another faction. They offer banking, chartering ships and shipments, and they are also secretly working with the Evidence Bureau to smuggle sopor off the island for sale in Outer Isle black markets. Now, sopor there'll be more information about on another page, but basically it's a powerful and addictive drug that interacts in some interesting ways with magic. And then finally we have this building. The front of the building, facing north, is the field office of the Admiralty Evidence Bureau, which is another major faction. They offer mail services across the Isles, and everyone knows that all mail going through them will be read. It's a coin per letter and 20 coins per small parcel. They also secretly receive and process sopor for distribution through the Merchants Guild and locally down the nearby overgrown narrow chimney down to a fireplace in 128, which is right here. In the rear, upstairs, is the Back Inn brothel, secretly operated by the Bureau to gain intel and compromat from Johns, and they sometimes even secretly dose them with sopor. So a little more information about the general services available here. So in general, with whatever RPG you're using to run this, you can find most items in a standard item list at the general store or more specialized people all around town. But I do have a little extra detail about lodging and also about banking. Banking's not going to matter much when you're starting out, but in a campaign, you'll find that as you accumulate wealth, that wealth becomes bulkier and bulkier and harder to secure, because wealth in these games is not just, some number in a digital bank account. It is precious metals and gems and artifacts and you name it. So to that end, there are three major groups that offer banking services. So first we have the Hall of Coin, which again is right up here. They're very secure. They are backed by the Admiralty. They have a charter from the Admiralty. They are strictly by the book, above board, and they issue promissory notes, so you can give them large sums of money in exchange for a promissory note, which will be recognized almost anywhere in the entire Admiralty and honored. However, the Hall of Coin is only accessible to nobility or people who are backed by nobility. So it's probably not going to be very accessible to players starting out. They have the most expensive storage because it's the most secure and has the best backing of 2% of the value stored per month. And they also offer loans, again, only to nobles or people with noble backing, minimum of 5,000 coin at a rate of 5% a month, or 10,000 or more coin at a rate of 10% a month. maybe more of a late game thing for players. Then we have the Merchants Guild, which is right here. They're fairly secure, not as secure as the Hall of Coin. The merchant guild halls across the Isles will recognize their promissory notes, but nobody else will. So if you wind up going to some other island and there is no Merchants Guild Hall there, you can have your promissory note, but people will probably not recognize it as, legal tender. Storing wealth with them is a bit cheaper at 1.5% of the value per month, and they also offer loans that are a little more accessible, minimum of 1,000 coin for 20% a month, plus 1% per additional 1,000 lent. And then finally, we have the Brotherhood of Noble Seafarers, the Privateers Guild. As you can imagine, they're basically pirates. They're the least secure, but if you get in good with them, they are willing to store hot items like, stuff you've stolen or stuff that you haven't paid the taxes on and are hiding. They do not issue promissory notes, but they can ship items for you for a fee. Storing stuff with them is only 1% of the value per month, and for loans, they don't have a minimum, so you can get them to loan you 5 coin if you want, but interest is 40% per month, plus 10% for each 100 coins you borrow. So you borrow 50 coins, you're paying 40% per month. You borrow 500 coins, you're paying 90% per month. So they're the most accessible, but they're also really gouging you for loans, and they have the cheapest storage, but also you're literally giving money to pirates who have, gone legit. So, buyer beware. One thing you might notice is that all of the currency here is just listed as C for coins. That's because this is a system neutral setting. I'm not trying to assume any particular system. Coin is whatever your standard of currency is. For most systems, that'll probably be gold, but for some systems, it might be silver, guilders, or crowns, or whatever. So I just have it listed as coin. You can convert it to whatever you want. And speaking of different RPG systems, because this is a system neutral module, I will be providing some guidance for adapting it to different systems that people want to play it with. So leave a comment and let me know what system you would play this with. I'd love to hear from you. Okay, so I think the last big chunk of text on this page is the weather table. So the weather table is very simple. Each day you roll a d6. If it's in the calm season, which is months 1 through 3, you subtract 1 from the roll. If it's in the stormy season, months 7 through 9, you add 1 to the roll, and it's a minimum 1, maximum of 6. So if you roll a 6 in the stormy month, you add 1 to it to get 7, but it's a maximum of 6, so it's just 6. 1 is light mist, 2 is misty drizzle, 3 is light rain, 4 is breezy rain, 5 is driving rain, 6 is stormy deluge. And then multiple 6s in a row is a tempest. So there's no visibility, there's flooding, there's gale force winds, and travel is super dangerous, if not impossible. And so, because of how this works, during calm season, you'll never roll a 6, so it's never going to be too crazy, and you'll roll light mist twice as often. And then in the stormy season, you'll never get light mist, and you'll roll stormy deluge twice as often, which means you're going to get some tempests, probably. Okay, so the last thing to cover here is really the entrances into the dungeon. We have a few obvious ones where these rivers are flowing out, and also this entranceway over here. This was historically the main entrance to the baths. There's a stone path here, but it's completely overgrown, and it's actually fairly easy to miss if you don't know about it. Over here, we have this arch that the river runs out of through a rusty iron gate. Over here, we have a cave with water flowing out, and you're going to get wet, but you can get in there. Over here, we have a rocky crevice down into the baths, so you'll have to do a bit of climbing to get down there. So over here, the north part of town goes up to this cliff, and there's a fissure in the cliff face. There's actually another little one over here, and you can squeeze into it. It's pretty tight. You would have to take off any bulky armor and just go in one at a time, but that's another way in. Over here, as I mentioned, there's this narrow chimney that goes down to the next level, and it is used by the Evidence Bureau to move drugs. Then we have this waterfall here. So we've got the Lake Baintoch, which is this, and you can see that it flows into this hole in the ground, and that also goes into that level. And then we have this hidden ladder. It's in this well-concealed hole, and it's only known to Bath Kobold scouts. The Bath Kobolds are the kobolds who live in the baths in the next level. So there's also the secret stairs in the Temple of Jormungandr that actually nobody knows about, and there's the old well in the middle of town. Now, one of the things I was able to do because of this format that was actually pretty cool was I made all of the connections between levels just line up. So this rocky crevice right here lands you right here. So you can just get right in. This narrow fissure right here, is this narrow fissure right here. The secret stairs underneath the temple is this narrow little spiral staircase right here. The old well is right here, and this is actually just a well shaft, so it keeps going down to here and opens up into this natural cave with some water, and you can see that this cave actually is connected to a bunch of stuff. And the same is true for everything else. So this waterfall is this ladder is this main entrance and this barred archway. That's the main entrance, that's the barred archway, right? So it's all directly one-to-one, so it's very easy to find where the connections are. So here in 120, we have these stairs going down to 224. Where's 224? Well, it's directly below. So that was another aspect of this design that kind of just emerged from building it this way, which was really cool. So another thing I'm sure you'll have noticed by now is that there is a kind of collage element to this spread. You can see that this up here is some paper that I've glued on, same over here and over here and over here. And there's a few reasons why I did that. One reason is that there was stuff that I just wanted to cover up, and I could have done it with correction fluid, but there was enough of it that it was easier to just paste paper over it. The other reason is that this is actually grid paper, so it has this very fine grid on it, which I could use to write out all this stuff and keep it evenly spaced and, you know, keep it fairly neat. But yeah, that said, there's a good amount of correction fluid on here. There's pieces kind of glued on in various places. And so there's a fair amount of cleanup that needs to happen once these pages are scanned. So that's pretty much this update. I've scanned these, I've already started cleaning them up, and I am currently working on the factions spread and tables and starting to go through the actual dungeon levels and adding more keying to all of those levels. So yeah, thank you very much to everyone who backed the Kickstarter and who has pre-ordered the book or the posters, both of which are still available for pre-order at paradiso.oo/Gixa, G-I-X-A. And as always, huge thanks to my supporters, who you can see here on YouTube and at my website, paradiso.zone, where you can sign up for my newsletter for free, and you can become a paid member to support my work, keep me making stuff like this, and my various other projects, which are detailed on the site. Supporters get a lot of great rewards, and you can also get my previous book, The Mothership Module Warped Beyond Recognition, at my online store at paradiso.works. I'm really excited about how this project is coming together. The music that you've been listening to in this episode is actually part of the soundtrack for this module, which will be included as part of the digital files that will come with the module. So you'll get PDFs of everything plus a soundtrack with tracks for every level of the dungeon. And Galen has been doing a fantastic job of capturing the mood and atmosphere that I want to get across with this setting. And I think that's an update, so let's call it here. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed this. Let me know what systems you would use to run this, and as a referee, what information you would want to have. And yeah, I'll see you in the next update. Be well, and take care. Bye.